The case for Washington, D.C.'s Metro Rail system, a priority to mitigating greenhouse gases. In this presentation, I'm going to take a look at Washington, D.C.'s air problem, give an overview of the Metro Rail system, attacks on Metro Rail's budget, current issues facing the Metro Rail, including lack of maintenance and a lack of a dedicated funding source, D.C. Metro's selling points, roadways as an alternative to the Metro Rail system, and why D.C. Metro Rail's funding should be protected. D.C. has had a historic air problem related to ozone pollution. In May 2013, the American Lung Association's State of the Air report ranked Washington, Baltimore, and Northern Virginia region at number 9 in its most polluted cities by ozone concentrations. In 2015, after the success of some efforts to reduce emissions in the region, D.C. improved to become the 22nd most polluted city by ozone rating. Ozone is a secondary pollutant created as a result of a chemical reaction on sunny days in areas with significant primary pollutants, typically from automobiles and industrial processes that release nitrogen. In large concentrations, ozone can damage cell walls in the lungs and airways, leading to swelling, scarring, and fluids building up in the lungs. Extended exposure to ozone damages the lungs' elasticity, which makes it difficult to breathe, while increasing susceptibility to bacterial infection. DC's ozone season lasts from May until September. During the season, ozone levels are typically higher than the rest of the year and often surpass the national ambient air quality standards for primary pollutants. The primary sources of ozone within Washington, D.C. are on-road mobile sources from motor vehicles and airflows from the surrounding region. Though D.C. only has a population of 650,000, its population quadruples in size each day due to commuters and millions of national and international tourists who visit the nation's capital on an annual basis. The commuting population in D.C. amplifies pollution through vehicular emissions, according to a study conducted by Texas A&M Transportation Institute and a data company called INRIX. D.C. has the worst congestion in the United States with around 82 hours of delay per commuter, and that was back in 2015. With many of the city's commuters using motor vehicles, this leads to an increased amount of pollution as they idle, waiting to get into and out of the city. Nearly 75% of ozone pollution in the area is transported from the wind from other states. D.C. has to work with local, regional, and national governments to reduce the pollution affecting D.C. from the surrounding area. The Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, WMATA, was created in an interstate compact in 1967 to build a regional transportation system in the national capital area. It began operating in 1976. Today it serves 91 stations and has 117 miles of track. Authority over Metro is shared by its 16-member board, which includes members from the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia, and 4 representatives from the federal government. Aside from the initial 5 metro lines, work has begun on the Silver Line, is working to operate out into the Dulles International Airport, and there are also plans to build a Purple Line, which is a light rail system. Unlike the normal metro, which is mostly underground, has bigger stations, and has longer trains, the Purple Line is mostly above ground, and the proposed Purple Line would run inside the Capital Beltway between Bethesda in Montgomery County and New Carrollton in Prince George's County. And the proposed metro line would connect across several of the existing metro rail lines to increase ridership in the region. Despite proposing a $1 trillion infrastructure plan to be announced sometime this year, President Trump's administration's proposed budget earlier this April proposed slashing much of the federal transportation budget by 13%, cutting millions in federal grants that the DMV, the DC, Maryland, and Virginia region, has relied on for new rail lines and road work. Trump's budget goal was to decrease transportation costs by $2.4 billion. At risk were several funding sources, including Congress's $150 million annual appropriation under the Passenger Rail Investment and Improvement Act, which designated $1.5 billion for Metro over 10 years, requiring that Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia match the $150 million per year. Trump's plan also included a $2.8 million cut to Metro's funding from the Transit Security Grant Program, which protects infrastructure and the public from acts of terrorism under the Homeland Security budget. While the congressionally agreed upon budget has protected the initial $150 million from the uh, Passenger Rail Investment Improvement Act, it doesn't guarantee that further budget cuts in the long term could occur. The current general manager of the Metro Rail system, Paul Widefield, says that the system has about $25.5 billion in unfunded capital needs. He is currently pushing for a $15.5 billion plan, which includes $1.5 billion a year for the next decade, calling for most of the funding to go to infrastructure investment. The DC Metro Rail system does not have a dedicated source of funding. Rather, it relies on unpredictable annual local, state, and federal investments. It is one of the only major U.S. transit systems without a dedicated funding source, and the system does not have any contingency funds available should the government shut down or there be any major issues that require immediate resolution. One of the largest problems with the Metrorail system's budget is that it seeks operating subsidies from 3 different jurisdictions, each with their own interests and constraints. Rather than taking joint ownership of the Metrorail system, these locales often neglect the Metrorail system. 2015-2016 was scored by numerous incidents on the Metrorail system relating to smoke incidents, fire accidents, train fires, smoke-filled tunnels, and an increased frequency of delays. There's been an overall deterioration of tracks, electrical systems, rail cars, and equipment. Historically, the DC Metro system has pushed for growth over maintenance, opting for new rail lines and new rail stations over maintaining the lines, trains, and equipment it already has. The DC Metro rail system has often been reactionary, reacting to the current crises that have arisen. Following the death of an elderly woman in Alexandria, Virginia, following a smoke-filled train incident in early January 2016, on March 15, 2016, the entire Metro rail system was shut down for an emergency inspection of the rails, electrical equipment. Since the shutdown, Metro has begun a Safe Track program, which has involved the shutdown of various sections of the Metro rail system, single tracking in certain areas in order to allow for more time to fix problems along the tracks. Through shortening Metro rail operating hours on the weekends and evenings, the Metro system has given itself extra time to address key structural problems. It is hoped that through the Safe Track program and the Back to Good program by the Metro rail system, the Metro will be able to address much of the problems that it's currently facing. One potential solution to the budget problem that the DC Metro is having is the introduction of a 1-cent sales tax hike in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, which will provide for an additional $700 million available to the Metro rail system annually. However, this is under much scrutiny as it requires the mutual appetite to do so. Here are some of the DC Metro Rail's selling points. The Metro offers 6.8% more value to residential properties, 9.4% to multifamily properties, and 8.9% to commercial office properties within a half mile of a rail station. Annual savings from mass transit opportunities is equated to about $342 million annually. Metro Rail has carried 217 million trips in 2010 and saves the capital region almost 148,000 hours a day being lost to traffic congestion. Travel by Metro also saves 40.5 million gallons of fuel annually. Every year, more than 8 million Americans visiting the nation's capital are transported by the Metro Rail system. One of the alternative solutions that has been proposed to the Metro Rail system is making an argument for roadways, saying that with rising fares and declining trains, it doesn't make sense to spend more on Metro expansion. Metro's already has quite a number of problems related to management of his budget, failing to maintain itself, and that the 2-lane system means that any problems that the system is going to have in the future are going to result in increased delays, just as the system is currently experiencing with the Safe Track program. The argument is that there's plenty of other transportation opportunities out there, from taking buses to cars to ride-sharing services such as Uber and Lyft, and there are other regional transit opportunities such as the MARC train and Amtrak. The argument for roadways doesn't take into account the health benefits and the further required investment in order to make travel by roadways efficient. So investing in roadways is necessary, as there's plenty of crumbling infrastructure within the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. However, it should not be done at the expense of the metro system. Traffic congestion would increase greatly within the city. Arguments for the roadways as an alternative to the mass transit system argue that investment into the expansion of a failing metro rail system does not make sense when, for instance, the Purple Line lifetime cost is estimated to be $5.6 billion, which would never cover its costs. There'd be no return on investment for investors, and taxpayers would be liable for most overruns of the project. While the Metro Transit Authority predicted that the Purple Line would draw an average of 58,800 trips daily, opponents say that this is an overstatement, that would mean that the Purple Line would be one of the busiest light rail systems in the country, and that the ridership that the Metro Transit Authority had predicted for the new Silver Line fell 30% below its opening year projections, making it unlikely that the Purple Line would do any better. Furthermore, a 2008 Federal Transit Authority study concluded that ridership estimates had generally improved, but only half of 18 projects recently built in the U.S. had reached their projections or stood a good chance of getting close. The case against increased investment in roadways over the metro rail system doesn't take into account the current state of the DC roadway system. It doesn't take into account the traffic congestion that would result as construction would be taking place on these roadways. It also doesn't take into account that to replace the metro rail system alone, over 710 lane miles of arterials and highway would be required to keep traffic at its current speeds while directly replacing the metro service. The total cost of all that was estimated to be $4.7 billion as of 2010, and there would also need to be about 300 miles of new highway to replace other regional transit. There's also very limited space to expand roadways in the region within DC limits. The case for roadways in D.C. doesn't take into account D.C. Metro Rail's health impacts. According to the Washington Metro Area Transit Authority, about 260 tons of volatile organic chemicals, 22 tons of particulate matter, and 500,000 tons of carbon dioxide are avoided in the region due to reduced auto use associated with the Metro Rail system. The estimated environmental savings from the metro rail system is equated to $9.5 million. Air pollution claims about 70,000 lives a year, and the health damage from motor vehicle pollution is estimated between 29 billion and 530 billion. Public transportation creates 95% less carbon monoxide, 92% fewer volatile organic compounds, and nearly half as much as carbon dioxide and nitrogen oxide than motor vehicles. Despite its problems, the governments of D.C., Maryland, and Virginia should continue to prioritize funding to the metro system as a priority to combating greenhouse gases. Though there has been a number of issues due to historical lack of maintenance, the current general manager of Metro has proven his dedication to fixing the Metro's troubled rail lines, replacing old electrical cables, fixing leaks, its investment into new rail cars to prevent derailments. Through the Safe Track system, Metro has been able to put in the necessary work to fix the aging system's critical problems. The largest problem facing the metro system is its lack of a dedicated funding source. With differing political issues in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, and with the federal government itching to pull funds from transportation, now more than ever, the metro needs immediate and adequate continual funding to bring the system back into efficiency. Pulling money from the metro and its expansion to invest in roadway infrastructure would deal a critical blow to mass transit in D.C., while increasing congestion, traffic delays, and air pollution from the excessive amount of vehicles and idle traffic that result. Metro decreases air pollution in the city, reducing the health risks created by ozone and particulate matter in the air. With a renewed commitment to the metro system, D.C. can work to improve its ratings as one of the most polluted cities in the United States by ozone concentrations.